Hello, and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. It's Monday, the 25th of April. I'm Andrew Wilson, and this is Scotland at 7. First this evening, I have the latest daily update from Ukraine on day 61 of the illegal Russian invasion. Then I will introduce this evening's guest, and then together we will take a look at today's headlines from Scotland and around the world. The Russian Defence Ministry said it would open a humanitarian corridor earlier today for all civilians to leave the Azovstal steel plant in the besieged port city of Mariupol. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk said that Kyiv had not reached an agreement with Moscow on creating a corridor, and said the UN should act as the initiator and guarantor of any agreement with Russia on evacuating civilians from the plant. 5 railway stations in central and western Ukraine were hit by Russian airstrikes in the space of 1 hour on Monday. Alexander Kamyshin, the head of the Ukrainian railways, said that 5 stations came under fire, causing an unspecified number of casualties, as most of Ukraine was placed under an unusually long air raid warning for 2 hours on Monday morning. Large fires broke out early on Monday at 2 oil depots in the Russian city of Bryansk, less than 100 miles from the border with Ukraine, in a potential act of sabotage by Kyiv. Russian state media said that the first fire occurred at a civilian facility in Bryansk holding 10,000 tons of fuel, followed by a second fire at a military fuel depot holding 5,000 tons. Forensic doctors carrying out post-mortem examinations on bodies in mass graves north of Kyiv say that they have found evidence some women were raped before being killed by Russian forces. One doctor who has been carrying out autopsies on residents from Bucha, Irpin and Borodyanka said he had seen a few cases which suggest that these women had been raped before being shot to death. Russia should be weakened to the point where it can't do things like invade Ukraine, the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said after he and the Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited Kyiv and pledged a further $713 million to help Ukraine in its war effort. Blinken said that Russia is failing in its war aims while Ukraine is succeeding. He added that the US had put in place a strategy of massive support for Ukraine, massive pressure against Russia across all NATO members. Russia has warned the US against sending more arms to Ukraine. Moscow's ambassador to Washington, Anatoly Antonov, has told Russian state television. Antonov said that Russia had stressed the unacceptability of this situation when the United States of America pours weapons into Ukraine. Sweden and Finland have agreed to submit applications to join NATO at the same time, a Swedish newspaper has reported. Both countries have agreed to announce their applications in the week of the 16th to the 22nd of May, during the Finland President Sauli Niinisto's visit to Stockholm, according to reports. Russian President Vladimir Putin said that the FSB spy agency had foiled what he cast as a Western plan to kill a prominent Russian journalist. Without providing any evidence to support his claim, Putin accused the West of having turned to attempts to kill Russian journalists. Now, we are lucky enough to be joined this evening by our regular contributor, Chris McCusker. Chris is an activist and campaigner, a trades unionist and a caterer. He's a human rights worker and a very good friend to Broadcasting Scotland. Chris, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm grand, Andrew. Good to be back on my weekly contribution.
Well, we're very grateful to you for joining us on Monday evening, and it's great to see you this evening. We'll go to our first story, which is that Russia should be weakened to the point where it can't do things like invade Ukraine, the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said after he and the Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited Kyiv and pledged a further $713 million to help Ukraine in its war effort. The direct comment came a few hours after the 2 senior US figures met Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky and was followed by Russia making an official diplomatic complaint about American arms supplies. In a press briefing on the Polish-Ukrainian border, following a visit that had until then been conducted under a media blackout for security reasons, Austin was asked what the US would see as a successful outcome to the 2-month-long war. "We want to see Ukraine remain a sovereign country, a democratic country, able to protect its sovereign territory. We want to see Russia weakened to the point where it can't do things like invade Ukraine," the defense chief said. Since Russia invaded Ukraine on the 24th of February, the US has supplied more than $3.7 billion worth of arms to Kyiv, from Javelin anti-tank missiles and Switchblade combat drones to 90 howitzers to help combat Russia's artillery. The Western military alliance NATO has said repeatedly it does not intend to fight directly in the conflict. But Austin's comments also make clear that the US has become increasingly drawn into a proxy war, in which it has become the leading supplier of military aid. Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, added that the US had put in place a strategy of massive support for Ukraine, massive pressure against Russia across NATO members. It was having real results, he said, adding, "And we're seeing that when it comes to Russia's war aims. Russia is failing, Ukraine is succeeding." Russia said on Monday morning it had sent an official diplomatic note to Washington warning it against sending more arms to Ukraine, according to the country's ambassador to the US. So, Chris, there's quite a lot in this story this evening. Firstly, the Lloyd Austin, the American Secretary of State for Defense, said that Russia should be weakened to the point where it can't do things like invade Ukraine, which is not exactly diplomatic language. If this is the US beginning to ramp up their rhetoric with regard to the conflict in Ukraine, how do you think President Putin's going to react?
He's not going to like it, to be fair, and as rather inflammatory, to say the least. But I think that only my view, but I think that the Western allies are kind of like running out of ideas, possibly patience as well. That we had thought that maybe it wasn't coming to an end, but maybe we were starting to see a weakening from Vladimir Putin. So I think that they're trying every trick in the book in order to try and undermine them. We've seen that again. I happened to catch a glimpse of a small snippet where Piers Morgan was interviewing Donald Trump, and even Trump was using the language of the US and the rest of the allies would rise up and beat Russia, which is something that I didn't actually see coming from Trump. But I think along with the money that America has said that it will give to Ukraine, I think I was doing a quick calculation there, and I think there'll be calls soon in Westminster for even more money from Britain to up its game, because the figures that are quoted in this item, I think it leaves Britain wanting, shall we say.
Of course, Chris. One other aspect to this story I was going to ask you about, Anatoly Antonov, the Russian ambassador to the US, said, "We stress the unacceptability of this situation where when the United States of America pours weapons into Ukraine, and we demand an end to this practice." And he said that in an interview with Russia 24, the state-owned TV channel. Would that be regarded as perhaps a little bit hypocritical? Is he suggesting that only Russia should be able to pour weapons into Ukraine, and in the case of Russia, use them in Ukraine?
I think it definitely sounds that way to me, and I think we're only because there's a media blanket ban of anything coming out of Russia, and we're only getting small snippets. It gives you an insight into the propaganda that the Kremlin is pushing out to the citizens of Russia, and it is all obviously it's very pro Russian agenda, and it comes across as the wee man syndrome. and I think that will possibly. That's the whether it's the last act of Henry VIII or whether it's the last act of a desperate man. But I think that is pretty much all that Putin has to draw on at this moment in time.
Completely, Chris. Thank you. Now we'll look at another angle that has arisen as a result of the illegal invasion of Ukraine now, because Sweden and Finland have agreed to submit simultaneous membership applications to the US-led NATO alliance as early as the middle of next month, Nordic media have reported. The Finnish daily newspaper Italehti said today that Stockholm had suggested the two countries indicate their willingness to join on the same day, and that Helsinki had agreed as long as the Swedish government has made its decision. The Swedish newspaper Expressen cited government sources as confirming the report. The two countries' prime ministers said this month they were deliberating the question, arguing that Russia's invasion of Ukraine had changed Europe's whole security landscape and dramatically shaped mindsets in the Nordic region. Finland's Prime Minister Sanna Marin said then that her country, which shares an 810-mile border with Russia, would decide whether to apply to join the alliance quite fast, in weeks, not months, despite the risk of infuriating Moscow. Her Swedish counterpart, Magdalena Andersson, said Sweden had to be prepared for all kinds of actions from Russia, and that everything had changed when Moscow attacked Ukraine. Russia has repeatedly warned both countries against the move. Expressen said the simultaneous applications could be submitted in the week of the 16th of May, coinciding with a state visit to Stockholm by the Finnish president. Recent opinion polls have shown as many as 68% of Finns are in favour of joining the alliance, more than double the figure before the invasion, with only 12% against. Polling in Sweden suggests a slim majority of Swedes also back membership. Both countries are officially non-aligned militarily, but became NATO partners, taking part in exercises and exchanging intelligence after abandoning their previous stance of strict neutrality when they joined the EU in 1995 after the end of the Cold War. So, Chris, first of all, I think you and I have spoken about this before probably, but is this the law of unintended consequences in action for President Putin? Ukraine is signing up to join the EU, and Sweden and Finland are now talking very clearly and very strongly that they will imminently apply to join NATO.
Yeah, and I think, as we did previously discuss, Andrew, it's showing it's basically it's a showing of an act of solidarity with the NATO partners. That it's basically it's throwing a warning shot across Putin's bow to say you're doing this to Ukraine. We're telling you here and now that you're not about to do this to us. There has been rumblings that if Putin wins in Ukraine, then what's to stop him from doing it to other neighbouring countries? And since both of them are very close to Russia, it would be the natural move for Putin to flex his muscles. If he was to win in Ukraine, that is, it's not going 100% swimmingly for him at this moment in time.
Completely, Chris. Completely. And one thing that crossed my mind: Finland shares an 810-mile border with Russia. So should we be surprised that it now wishes to join a defensive alliance when Russia has apparently now taken to invading neighbouring sovereign nations?
Well, no, and that's what I was alluding to, because I think that Finland are effectively shutting up shop, and they're saying to Russia, "We don't want anything to do with you." They haven't been. I think over the years, certainly since the end of the Cold War, they've kind of put up with each other, but there's not been an awful lot of cooperation, shall we say. But in saying that, there's not really been any encroachment from Russia either. It has to be said. Sorry, to be fair, it has to be said. But I think it's given a clear indication that especially Finland and Sweden are basically turning around to Putin and saying, don't mess with us because it just won't wash. We won't stand for it.
Thanks, Chris. We'll move now to another aspect of the situation in Ukraine, and something that I know that you will be able to help us with, because the SNP has reiterated calls to introduce visa-free access to the UK for Ukrainian refugees, after figures revealed that of 107,000 visa applications, only 21,600 refugees had arrived in the UK as of the 20th of April. The party's Shadow Home Secretary, Stuart MacDonald MP, called on the UK government to lift restrictions again at today's Home Office questions, highlighting that Ireland, a nation 13 times smaller by population, has so far welcomed more refugees than the UK. The UN estimates that over 5 million people have fled the country since Russia's invasion on the 24th of February, with the majority seeking refuge in neighbouring countries. This means that less than half of 1% of refugees have found refuge in the UK. Commenting, Stuart MacDonald MP said, "The last thing families fleeing Putin's war need is to be wrapped up in Home Office red tape and left in a state of limbo as to their visa application. It's no coincidence," he continued, "that Ireland, a country 13 times smaller than the UK by population, has welcomed more refugees than we have so far. Like all EU nations, they have waived visa requirements to prioritise Ukrainian families' safety. We must follow suit." So, Chris, first of all, a whistleblower from a contractor working for the Home Office in respect of the processing of Ukrainian visa applications is reported as saying the system is designed, it would appear, for people to fail. They want to keep the numbers down. Everything they do feels as if it is to do that. So, what do you think is the motivation for this alleged approach by Westminster? Is it just Priti Patel playing to her racist right-wing base?
Yeah, pretty much. And that whistleblower must have been watching an edition of Scotland at 7 from a couple of weeks ago, because I think I actually said that to you, Andrew, that it is very much a system that has been set up to fail from the start. My own situation, I only just got notification this week of the survey by East Round Council as to the criteria. It is running very slow. There are a number of groups getting in touch with my own group, Eastwood Refugee Aid, to try and sort of give them updates, and we can't tell them anything that we don't already know, because the information is short on coming out of various government departments. Even the MPs don't really, they can't shed any light on it. They don't have a magic wand and a instant messenger call to the Home Office, and it seems to be coming, as I say, straight from the Home Office, that things are really running so slow. So Stuart MacDonald's right to highlight this, and quite rightly highlights the fact that Ireland are performing far better, although it's not a race. I have to stress that. But by the same token, the granting of automatic visas would be welcome, but I'm not wholly convinced that it would speed up the whole process, to be honest with you, because I feel that it's getting bogged down by the Home Office, because of Priti Patel's narrative. And I find it quite strange, because if we remember, Theresa May, when she was in charge of the Home Office, that's where the whole hostile environment came from. And it seems to me that Priti Patel is pretty much nurturing that mantra and creating this void within the Home Office, which it makes people feel that they're trudging through treacle. To be quite honest with you.
That's a great metaphor, Chris. Thank you. And now, as I was saying, and this varies from day to day, but for the purposes of this question, there have been 107,000 visa applications. There have been 72,000 of those applications have been granted, and I think it's actually about 25,000 people have actually made it to the UK by this morning. The 21,000 number is from late last week. So if we're talking about, for the sake of argument, 25,000 Ukrainian refugees having made it to the UK, less than half of 1% of the total number of refugees, how do you think that makes the UK look in the eyes of other countries who are accepting and receiving many times more refugees, all without any visa or other ridiculous red tape?
It just makes it look, it just, honestly, it's laughable, and people's views on the whole Ukrainian refugee system is absolutely, it's derisible, to say the least. When I've been when this first came out, obviously I was calling for it to be extended to Palestinians, Somalians, Eritreans, Afghans, and any refugee that happens to find themselves in Europe who are fleeing war. And to be honest with you, there's a part of me thinks that they're actually better off out of it, because it's just red tape upon red tape upon red tape. And I used, thank you for your compliment on the metaphor that I used, but it honestly is. I've got people messaging our group, Eastwood Refugee Aid, and they wanted to offer furniture. They want to donate beds and sofas and ironing boards, and people messaging me saying, could you use this stuff for for when refugees get here and when they get put into houses? Well, the harsh reality is the fact that, unfortunately, East Rhyn doesn't have any houses to start with. And point of fact, East Rhyn haven't even yet got any Afghan refugees, let alone Ukrainian refugees. The Afghan refugees are still stuck in the hotels, and they haven't been dispersed into the community. And that's no way to look after, people. Honestly, I was going to use the word human beings, but but they are people, and they're living out of a room with nothing but a kettle, bed sheets and all the rest of it. And obviously a television that they can't understand, so why bother putting it on? It's absolutely atrocious. Look, I get the fact that there are no empty homes and stuff like that, and I get the argument as well of people saying, well, if there are empty homes, they should be given to the homeless in Glasgow first. And and you go down that road of the selection process, such as I mean, honestly, it was only 8 years ago, the fact I myself was actually homeless, and honestly I had nowhere to go. I was sleeping out the back of my van at the time, and I was sofa surfing, and it's a horrendous thing to be homeless, and I'm not taking it away from people in that position, but it's even worse when you're actually in a foreign country. It must be 100 times worse when you're in a foreign country. So both governments have got to up their game. And I know it can't happen overnight, but there has to be, and this is where Scottish Government wins hands down. The radical housing building projects that are going on and stuff like that. Doesn't seem to be an awful lot of housing projects going on down south of the border. But anyway, I've had my rant about that. I'm sorry, Andrew.
Nope. All the points you're making perfectly justified and good points. Thanks, Chris. We'll move on to another story now that's also something that I think, Chris, you'll be able to help us with, because at the Scottish Trade Union Congress in Aberdeen, the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, has announced £100,000 in grant funding to support just transition capacity within the trade union movement. The money will be used by the STUC to coordinate worker engagement on just transition, amplify and share best practice, and to provide policy support. Unions continue to be fundamental in delivering a just transition to a net zero and climate resilient Scotland, helping to ensure a low carbon economy prospers in Scotland. This year's event marks the 125th year since the first STUC annual Congress, and the First Minister said the case for a strong union movement never goes away, with addressing inequalities a key priority for the Scottish Government in helping Scotland to recover from COVID-19. The First Minister said, "We want the trade unions to continue to influence and shape our delivery of a just transition. That's why I'm glad to be able to confirm today that we are providing the STUC with annual funding of £100,000 to cover STUC staffing costs for officials who can liaise with workers and with government." The unions, through the creation of the Just Transition Commission, have already been fundamental to our policy thinking about a just transition. This funding will ensure that they continue to be vital and we get on with delivering good green jobs and a truly just transition. She continued, "The Scottish Government economic strategy rests on the idea that by supporting those who are in poverty, by delivering a just transition, by supporting fair work, we can help people to fulfil their potential and to contribute to our economy and our society." So, Chris, first of all, do you think, will this £100,000, will it make a difference to achieving a just transition in Scotland, in the Scottish economy?
I think it will go a long way. We'll just leave it at that. I don't think it will. I'm talking about it. I can't leave it at that. I'm a socialist, for God's sake. More will be needed. It's a welcome amount, but more will be needed because there's a lot of work going on in the background, which Joe Public doesn't get to see. I should have been up at the Trade Union Congress today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. Unfortunately, there was a mix-up in bookings with the STUC for the trade union group to get a stall. So we've got our comrades Simon Barrow, who's a contributor to the show now and again, and our chair Bill Ramsey. Both of them are up there as delegates. So the SNP Trade Union Group are well represented in those two stalwarts. So yeah, it's welcome, and not only that as well. The First Minister being at the Trade Unions Congress is good. Well, I mean it's great PR, but it actually shows the good working relationship that the STUC has with the National Party and the level of engagement that they have, and as we do, the Trade Union Group have got a great working collaboration with the likes of Ros Foyer and Dave Moxham and all the gang down there. So yeah, it was good. It was I caught a small glimpse of earlier on where the First Minister was handing out the awards and stuff like that. So but going back to the money, it's welcome, but I think more will definitely be required if we actually need to do the work. To get that green transition, that just transition that's needed, and it's something that the SNP, the trade union group, the Greens, and the STUC, we've all got that in common. So I think that's really good.
That's a good point, Chris. Collaborating and working together. Let's move to another story, though, because new figures reveal that over 5 million households have already been forced to choose between heating and eating, and more than half the people in the UK won't be able to afford their bills in the coming months. The figures come from an exclusive Delta Poll survey for the Daily Mirror and Daily Record, which also shows that two-thirds put the cost of living crisis as their primary concerns, and that soaring bills have impacted the mental health of over half of those surveyed. New data from the Office of National Statistics has also revealed that nearly a quarter of adults reported it was difficult to pay their usual household bills, an increase from 17% in November, and 43% reported it was difficult to afford their energy bills. Both sets of statistics, which are the first to come out following the Tory national insurance hike in April, highlighted that 9 in 10 people had seen their own cost of living rise. Commenting, the SNP Treasury spokesperson Alison Thewlis MP said, "These figures are harrowing. The fact that there are over 5 million people in 21st century Britain that are having to choose between heating and eating is disgraceful. And all of this is happening under the Tories in Westminster. The Prime Minister should feel ashamed." So, Chris, in the Daily Mirror Daily Record survey, which was conducted after this month's hikes, they found that a £20 a month rise in energy bills would mean that a quarter of the population would face extreme financial difficulties. Now, £20 a month on energy bills, and inflation and tax rises on top of that. Do you think that the millionaire Rishi Sunak or perhaps Boris Johnson, who after all has a liking for wallpaper that costs £840 a roll, do you think they understand the impact of £20 a month on the rest of us?
No. And as we've discussed before, I mean, Rishi Sunak, fails to understand the concept of contactless payment. So I mean, I would very much doubt that that it means anything. So I mean, they're reading the stories as well as what normal people are doing, and they're doing this in the fullness of knowledge that people are struggling, and the figures that you cited there, it makes for grim reading. And Alison Thewlis is 100% correct. I said this to her a week ago when I was at a demo in the square, and and it really is. It's not only is it harrowing, but it's actually frightening to think that it will be ramped up again. When we get into the later months of the year. But I mean, there was one I was reading there now. Where is it? Sorry, I'm not doing this off the top of my head. I've got, but I want to get it right. So this actual poll that was conducted jointly by the Mirror and the Record, it's actually prompted Ofgem to launch an investigation into whether the suppliers have jacked up the customers' direct debits more than what is necessary. Now, I mean, that's a small wee snippet that I took from the Mirror. But I mean, on a personal note, I'm with Bulb, and my monthly bills, I don't mind telling people, my monthly bills were £66 a month for my dual fuel, and it is yet to go up. Now, I have actually fired off an email because I was out, if you remember, I was out in Lanzarote in March for a full week, and yet, I've got a smart meter fitted, and that smart meter's not smart enough to tell Bulb that nothing was on in the house for a full week, and yet I've still got to pay the £66, and I'm still in credit as well. So there's nothing smart about it. So I would say that Ofgem, just based loosely on my train of thought there, I would be thinking that Ofgem are going to uncover some skullduggery by the major suppliers. Because I don't believe that they're obviously working in the interest of the consumer.
No, it'll be their shareholders. You're absolutely right. But we'll move on to another story now, which is also energy related, because Nicola Sturgeon joined candidates in Aberdeen today to pledge that the SNP councillors in the North East will put right what Ms Sturgeon described as over a decade of toxic Tory cuts and disregard for the region. Visiting the new Greyhope Bay Centre, the SNP leader called out the Tories for shortchanging the region by at least £1.77 billion through failure to invest in the regional carbon capture facility, amounting to a loss of about £1 billion for the area, and as promised by the Tories in 2015, failure to match the Scottish Government's £500 million just transition investment, and failure to match SNP spending on city deals to the tune of £254 million, equivalent to £1,125 per household. Recent figures also indicate that the region is set to be shortchanged yet again, this time by £13.5 million, as a result of the Tories' Shared Prosperity Fund failing to match previous EU funding. Nicola Sturgeon will highlight how the SNP will fight for the future of the North East, from tackling the current Tory cost of living crisis to investing in a just transition that will help fulfil the potential of the North East as a global, sustainable energy hub for the future. Now, Chris, voters in the North East have continued to support the Tories more than any other part of the country, except perhaps the borders. Do you think that this explanation and these numbers that the First Minister has been quoting today, do you think that these numbers will start to sink in the North East?
One would hope so, and I'm glad that you mentioned the borders, Andrew, because I recently tweeted out the fact that the borders council areas, the constituency of Alistair Jack, the so-called Viceroy, there has been 4 million that has been completely wasted and has totally been missed by the UK government to give to the Scottish government for that region. And I noticed as well that Sunday's contributor, Fiona Graham, she was asking the same thing about what's happening to the likes of Orkney as well. And so these are two kind of like unionist controlled areas within Scotland who seem to be quite happy the fact that this money is not been allocated forward from the Treasury, which is to be used in that area. And it seems to me that they are sitting on their hands at this moment in time. And we could probably say the same would be for any other constituency, not just the northeast of Scotland, but again, as I say, Dumfries and Galloway, right up to Orkney and the Shetlands. So, if it's happening in those 3 regions, it's bound to be happening, in the East Coast as well and stuff like that. So, this will all come out, and I'm looking forward to the 5th of May, where I'm really hoping that pro-independence parties, and I choose my words very carefully there. I'm hoping that pro-independence parties are going to actually give the unionist parties a good bloody nose and make them sit up and smell the coffee.
Excellent. We'll look forward to smelling that coffee, Chris. But we'll move to our next story now, because members of the House of Lords today passed amendments to the Elections Bill to protect free and fair elections in the UK by upholding the independence of the Electoral Commission. Clauses within the bill would give ministers new and unchecked powers over the Commission, leaving it open to undue influence and undermining free and fair elections in the UK. The move has raised concerns about the disproportionate control the bill would give to the governing party to decide how electoral law is applied at election times. Amendments 45 and 46 to the bill, which seek to protect future elections by ensuring that the Electoral Commission remains fully independent of government, were moved in the Lords by constitutional expert and former Lord Chief Justice of England and Wales, Lord Judge. The amendments passed earlier this evening by 265 votes to 199, meaning that MPs will now be forced to vote on the specific issue of the Electoral Commission's independence, starting the so-called ping-pong process between the two Houses of Parliament. If the Lords continue to vote to amend this aspect of the Elections Bill until Parliament is prorogued, the entire Elections Bill will fail, and Parliament could be prorogued as soon as the 28th of April, and no later than the 4th of May. The defeat comes as new polling by Opinion revealed that 70% of people want the Commission to remain fully independent of government, while only 8% of people said it should not. So, Chris, do you think are their lordships and ladyships going to be able to protect the independence of the Electoral Commission, or at least to talk this bill out so that it falls when Parliament stops sitting in a couple of weeks' time?
Andrew, I didn't know you were such a royalist to use, the loyal language there of, using their proper titles. I was actually checking on this bill earlier on, and it's still in progress at third reading. So when it goes to the final stages, consideration of amendments and then royal assent, that's when you've really got to start worrying. And those percentages again that you quoted quite eloquently, it does show that people want it to remain completely autonomous from government. I don't normally take an awful lot of interest in what happens in the other place, but yes, I'm taking a wee bit of interest in this. Because it has, I was going to say, it's got its obvious ramifications, but it's got wider ramifications for our democracy, for God's sake. And if people don't understand that, again, they really need to wake up and smell what they're shoveling, because it's not 100%, right. It's, if government can actually, basically manipulate, people on paper, and that's what it is. They can actually manipulate people on paper, and use the word fix, shall we say, or rig. The way that elections are staged, run, as honestly, it's going to kill. Well, I mean, we already know that democracy is dead in the UK anyway. It's not just Scotland that are getting treated badly as well, but this will it'll affect our comrades down in Wales, and it'll leave us trapped. It'll leave us trapped in this despotic vortex that the Tories have created in order to hold on to power.
We'll need to keep thinking about and talking about that despotic vortex as we go forward, Chris. Thank you. But let's look at politics elsewhere, because Emmanuel Macron is expected to announce a new Prime Minister in the coming days, as he turns his focus to legislative elections in June, after his defeat of Marine Le Pen in the presidential runoff yesterday. The French Prime Minister, Jean Castex, has said that he will resign along with the government, allowing Macron to choose a fresh face and team for his second 5-year term in office. Analysts suggest that Macron may name Elisabeth Borne, the Minister for Work, as Prime Minister, only the second woman in France to hold the post. Others being touted for the Hôtel de Matignon, that's Paris's equivalent of number 10, include the Finance Minister, Bruno Le Maire, the Interior Minister, Gérald Darmanin, or the Agriculture Minister, Julien de Normandie. Even before it was announced that Macron had been re-elected president on Sunday, attention had turned to the next electoral cycle. He will need his party, La République En Marche, and its allies to achieve a majority to avoid the formation of a hostile government that could paralyse his programme. The task of appointing a new Prime Minister and Cabinet is made particularly tricky, as Macron will be looking to appeal to radical left voters who had backed Jean-Luc Mélenchon in the first round of the presidential election, while at the same time avoiding alienating supporters of Le Pen. Macron is facing demands to show that he is president of all the French, after winning 58.54%, compared with Le Pen's 41.46% of the vote in Sunday's second round election. His victory will be officially confirmed by the country's Constitutional Council on Wednesday. So, Chris, firstly, what's your reaction to the news that Marine Le Pen is not the next president of the Republic of France?
One of joyous elation. And the best quote that I've read so far is her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, founder of the National Front, said his daughter had done everything that she could in order to win. And if that's her doing everything that she could to win, then, I think, she better take up another calling in her career, because it's certainly not politics. So, I mean, I was worried at the weekend that things seem to be fairly balanced, and Marianne Le Pen was sort of like enjoying some, shall I use the word, populism, within the polls and stuff like that, and it was looking, a wee bit. I'll probably fall out with the producers when I say squeaky bum time, but it was, Macron, he wasn't doing too well, and it was sort of like running neck and neck, shall we say, on a couple of occasions. But I think that good sense has prevailed, thankfully, in France, and I think that Macron does now have a job to select the right person that is going to sweep up the nearly 40% of centre-left people who weren't engaged in the whole election process, because they felt that their votes were wasted between both candidates. So he's got some thinking to do in order to put someone in there, to fill that void and stuff like that, and give them a wee bit of breathing space.
Thanks, Chris. We've got another European election story this evening as well, because left and liberal pro-EU politicians have welcomed the defeat of Slovenia's right-wing populist Prime Minister Janez Janša to a political insurgent who has pledged to restore normality to the Central European nation. With nearly all ballots counted, the political newcomer Robert Gallop gained nearly 35% of the vote for his freedom movement, launched in January. He's expected to form a government with the support of smaller left-wing groups, ending the hard-right government led by Janša, who had styled himself in Hungary's autocratic leader, Viktor Orban, and who took under 24% of the vote. Pro-EU politicians reacted with delight to Golob's victory, which emerged at the same time as Emmanuel Macron beat his far-right rival Marine Le Pen to take his second term as the President of France. During Janša's two-year government, Slovenia has experienced the sharpest democratic decline in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, according to Freedom House. While that NGO noted that political rights and freedoms were generally respected, it also said that Janša's government has made continued attempts to undermine the rule of law and democratic institutions, including the media and the judiciary. Turnout reached 70% of the 1.7 million electorate, much higher than the 52% of the previous election in 2018. During the campaign, Golob promised to restore normality and build the elections as a referendum on democracy. The former energy executive, who ran a company promoting solar power, is also calling for a green energy transition. So, Chris, taken with the previous story that we discussed with regard to the result of the presidential election in France, do these two results contradict the narrative that we continue to see in the UK, in some of our media, that the rise of the right wing is inevitable and relentless in lots of countries?
Yeah, and I think that's a point well made. I don't mean to cheapen that point in any such way, but I would like to point out now that we have now seen two elections happening in Europe at a time of instability with the cost of living and the ongoing situation in Ukraine. So any chat from the unionist parties that now is not the time to hold an election, with regards the Tories in Westminster, a change of prime minister or a change even in government, which I don't know if it would leave us between the devil and the deep blue sea with Keir Starmer, right enough, but anything's got to be better than what we're currently enduring at this moment in time. So that democratic process has worked well in France and it has worked well in Slovenia. So there is no excuse now for Britain to be second guessing the fact that now's not the time to be having a even a leadership contest within the Tory party. But Britain needs a change of direction, and and as the last two stories have alluded to, any other democracy can handle the fact of change of government can happen. And that's it's a childish argument to suggest otherwise.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Now, as I said, Freedom House commented that continued attempts to undermine the rule of law and democratic institutions, including the media and judiciary, were something that they had seen from Janša's government. Now, continued attempts to undermine the rule of law, including the media and judiciary, sounds sounds to me alarmingly like someone who's currently bunking up in 10 Downing Street. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I think it's highly accurate. And as we can see that Nika Kovac actually faced horrendous abuse and stuff like that throughout this, and it seems to be all manufactured by the incumbent government in order not to change the administration. And again, I go back to the point that I made earlier on, is the fact that the Tories will stop at nothing in order to hold on to power. And if we look again, back at the last item that we were discussing with the House of Lords, that's exactly what the Tories want to do. They need the tools and the levers to be at their beck and call so that they can pull and push buttons in order to subjugate the citizens further by removing any liberties that we have at the ballot box, which is obviously the right to democratise. And I made the point earlier on Twitter this week, the fact that if we had a Labour government that was actually worthy of the name, Labour, a proper left-wing socialist Labour Party, the situation that this country is in just now, with the cost of energy crisis, with and the refugee crisis, and add that to the although Britain's not involved in the Ukrainian conflict, although the Tories would like to say that Britain is in a state of crisis because of the Ukrainian conflict, which gives rise to think that you can't rock the boat, during this juncture because of what's happening in Ukraine. You can't change the government. I made the point that if a proper operational working Labour Party that had the interests of the working class at its heart, we would have been looking at scenes from 1970 and 1980 where there would have been a general strike right across the country in order to demonstrate against this government, of their despotic leadership and what they're actually doing to the working class.
Absolutely, Chris. We live in curious times. But that was our final item this evening. In making these programmes, Broadcasting Scotland relies on the support of viewers and others who value our distinctive approach to news, culture and current affairs. If you would like to support us, then please consider subscribing or donating to Broadcasting Scotland. You will find the link to do that on the screen now. We really, really do need all of the financial assistance that we can raise in order to continue to do what we do and to do more of what we would like to do. There are other ways in which you can contribute to our work. If you would like to volunteer to work with Broadcasting Scotland, either behind the scenes or in front of the cameras, or in any other way that helps our work and promotes the station, then please visit our website at www.broadcastingscotland.scot and send us a message there. Meantime, Hugh will be here tomorrow evening at 7, so please tune in and join Hugh and his guest then. I would like to say thank you to everyone who has been watching this evening, and I would also, of course, like to repeat my very special thanks to our guest for this evening, Chris McCusker. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. A pleasure as always to see that butcher's apron dangling from behind your shoulder.
Over my shoulder, absolutely. Thanks, Chris. So that's the way it is, very nearly Scotland at 8. I hope that you can join us again soon on Broadcasting Scotland, but in the meantime, please keep warm and keep well. Bye-bye.